So I mentioned the design and planning, the basis of design or the building program, going to a schematic level. Then after schematics are approved, you have design development where they go away for a little while. They take what they think they've heard and turn it into a set of early plans, which are still malleable. You have a couple of iterations of that before you lock it in. And once it's locked in, that's when the money starts, that's when it starts getting really expensive if you keep making changes after that. So you want to really spend a lot of effort and time in speaking to your particular needs and challenges and making sure those details are put together before you go into, after design development, you go into construction documents. And these, again, have a few iterations, but these are the plans that will ultimately be permitted. And you have all of these things that you want and you hope to see, but standing in the way sometimes are real world practical limitations. But they don't always have to be limitations. And what I'm talking about is code, building code, from the width of doors to stair locations. Dead ends are a big thing. How occupancy, fire protection, all sorts of life safety. The code really is based on life safety, hopefully, and other considerations are built on top of that. You have Title 24 in California, which is about green building requirements, energy efficiency. But these can also be opportunities to really push a team to make a really strong building with the available resources. So just because you have a specific requirement regarding, let's say, illumination levels, you can work with your team, your architecture team, to make sure that your lighting is the best that it can be for your particular needs. A lot of choices out there, mind-numbing choices, really. I want to mention, automations and integration of automations. So buildings are now collaborations between facilities, engineering teams, and IT departments. There is so much automation that is demanded in some cases in order to reach the Title 24 requirements. That's the state code for energy efficiency, that they become complex machines. So going back to understanding and working with your engineering team about how your building works and how it's being maintained becomes ever more crucial, right? Because they are more than a set of mechanical equipment and wiring and plumbing, but they are machines that can operate efficiently or be very broken based on the automations and the integrations between systems that might exist. For a retrofit, you might not have some of these requirements, but you might consider some opportunities so that an automation related to your mechanical controls, you might have a view, an opportunity to have a live view of what the environmental conditions are, the same as an engineer, if it's accounted for in the design, development, and the bidding process for those subcontractors. Subcontractors can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So making sure that you are confident in the abilities to respond to the minutia of the building. And you're going to have subcontractors for every single trade, from concrete to steel to, those are the ones that probably are not such a big deal for you, but it's really with building controls, with air conditioning, all elements of that, climate control. filtration, special lighting controls are a pain in the ass all the time. They never seem to be as user-friendly as they could be. So again, making sure that you understand not everything about these complex machines, but if they hear that you're interested and you want to collaborate on there, you're going to have a better opportunity to participate in that design process. There's backup power requirements. You may want to make sure that your generator is you understand where it is and why it's there, right? Why it's located in a particular location. Trying to think of an example of why that would matter. I mean, it wouldn't be next to a intake air because it's going to be tested once a month and your power is going to go out and they're going to test it, and you kind of want to know why that's happening. That depends on what kind of building that you're in. If you're in a high rise, you have all kinds of other requirements, and a high rise is something that's only 75 feet tall from the street, so it doesn't have to be a giant building, but then you have suddenly a whole nother layer of code requirements. I would stay away from building a high rise in Los Angeles.
And how does this relate when you are working with an existing structure that's historic? Because that's often, I mean, we see this happening all the time, where there's a historic house and then the annex, like the modern edition that is next door, adjacent, or sort of like growing weirdly Frankenstein-y out of.
Well, you obviously, there's the historic building code that you can utilize that gives you some additional flexibility. I've seen it used as a crutch, an excuse, like, oh, well, we don't need to provide accessible pathways because because we're operating under the historic building codes. Like, I don't think that's the point of the ADA and of accessibility code. But obviously it presents really tough challenges. And in such a case, where you have a historic home or other kind of structure, and the institutional priority is preservation, access, and faithfulness to the character-defining features and the importance of that historic structure, that may be incompatible with archival storage. It might just not be the right place for it. And trying to shoehorn that in at all costs can compromise both the building and the collections. I think it really varies on the type.
Sometimes the answer is it's just not going to work and we have to do something else. Like that's sometimes a very hard answer to hear, but sometimes that is the truth.
And then I have a point here about coordination of subcontractor scope. And when I say coordination, I don't just mean the in the sense that we all think about just working well with someone, but a process in the subcontractor's scope is called coordination, and they're coordinating their pipes. They're coordinating them through hallways. The electrical contractor, the low voltage contractor, the plumbing contractor, there's the mechanical contractor has plumbing, wastewater, stormwater, domestic water, chilled water, heated water. All of those things need to be coordinated in the walls, in the ceilings, and this is a great opportunity early in the process, but also when changes occur, to make sure that they coordinate outside of your vault, that they're going through the hallway or the outside wall, or they're going to go over the bathroom instead of the collection management area. Is you want those elements coordinated away, even with some additional costs. Like, oh, the shortest path is right through here. Like, well, unfortunately, we can't always allow the shortest path for certain functions.
It's so helpful to know that like this one word as a term of art, and it reminds me that one of the key things to do if you're at the table for this process is to, like, if somebody's using a word, And it seems like they're using it in a way where, like I just keep thinking about that scene in The Princess Bride where it's like, I don't think that word means what you think it means, or like that word might not mean what I think it means. Being really, really okay from start to finish with asking the dumb question and saying like, hey, I'm sorry, can you, like, when you say coordination, what do you mean? Because those terms of art are crucial. And if I were sitting around the table with a bunch of architects and building planners who were talking about coordination, like I would not know how crucial this little point would be for me to be on top of. This is such important information, Andrew. Thank you.
And if you have an engineering firm or your architect has a engineer on their staff, they are a huge asset in helping to understand these things and also to advocate, because engineers want systems to work and they want buildings to work. And if they understand your priorities and goals, they will hopefully help you with that. Lisa, yes, coordination, when you look up in a new building with open ceilings, and you see beautiful, what I think are like beautifully aligned conduits without a mess of spaghetti and renovations over millennia, that is the work of, that's a job. That's a real job. It's like when you look at the credits, like what's a key grip? I don't know. Well, there's a coordinator who works for the plumbing contractor and it works for the electrician, and they have to work together because there's conflicts. Like, oh, I can't get through there. The electrician ran his conduit through there. It's a dance, and they are looking out for their own interests, the building interests, and then collaborating with their other subcontractors to execute that work. So when you look up and you see beautifully aligned conduits and pipes, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and take a moment to appreciate the coordination.
That is so beautiful. I also want to remind everybody again, if you're sitting at the table for this process, when you ask questions, you're not only eliciting information for yourself, you are giving information to the people you're talking to about your level of understanding and what they, as you say, Andrew, they want this project to go well. Like they're experts. And I say this every time I work with students, and have experts come to talk to them. It's that we forget when we're experts in our field how much of the knowledge we deploy every day is expert knowledge, and how many of the terms we use are terms of art because we use them every day. We're familiar with them. And so I always have encouraged my students, when you ask questions, that is so helpful for me. It gives me information. I think there's often a lot of fear and intimidation, and like, you don't want to seem like an idiot. But it is an act of generosity to take up that space and to say, I need more information here. It helps your collaborators, your colleagues figure out what you need to know in order to fully sign off, and not end up at the end of the project saying like, hey, nobody asked me. And then they say, well, we did ask you and you said fine. And you're like, okay, but I didn't super understand. And that was your job to help me understand. So yeah, making sure you're asking all of the questions you might possibly have is so, so important.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew, was that something you learned how to do? Because you're obviously very knowledgeable. Nobody's born knowing any of this stuff.
I'll just pop in and say that's why we had that question log. Mm-hmm. Is because of that, because everybody spoke a different language. When shelves were being put in, there was a difference. Like when I say a range of shelves, wasn't necessarily what, say, the installers thought a range of shelves were. Their vocabulary were like, oh, we call that a row or a column or a section. So that's just keeping track of those questions and the answers and who answers them. I can't, it's super important. Snowden asked if how you came to know all this. Things like coordination.
Asking questions, sometimes making myself sound foolish because I didn't understand a process quite as much as everyone else in the room and take some risks and be out in the field. Being out in the field is so critical in a building, and asking questions like pointing at, what is that thing? What does that do? I'm working with an organization now that has these round devices in a multi-purpose room. No one can tell me what it does. And I still haven't figured it out. I'm still determined to figure out, what do these round gray devices on the wall do? There's a function there. I have no idea what it is. Nobody there has any idea what it is. So I'm going to have to keep digging. And if I have to go to the building plans, I'll do so. So just, asking, observing, and talking.
Yeah, I would also say, like, there's no question that you can ask now that will make you look dumber than you're going to look later if you didn't ask it now. Like, you could, yeah. It's like you'll like, now is the time to look the least stupid. And so I always think about, like, present day me can look as dumb as she wants, so future me is going to look a lot smarter. But Denise asked a really great question about what if you're not allowed to ask questions? What if you're specifically warned off or specifically told, like, that's not your business, you don't get to interact? I don't have a perfect answer for this, but I do have one suggestion, which is, if there are a lot of you that are affected by this, Allison Green and the Ask a Manager blog, of which I'm a tremendous fan, always suggest approaching as a united front and saying, hey, we all have questions and concerns. We also are experts in our collection, and we're worried our voices aren't getting heard at a time when it will be most financially advantageous to hear from us. Like, we have concerns about things that might have financial implications. Like, if you don't deal with this now, it's going to cost us money later for us not to be heard. Maybe approaching as a group and saying, hey, we all have a lot of questions. We understand you don't have the time to deal with everybody's questions, but is there a single point of contact that you can designate that we can collectively pool our questions, and we can turn those questions over to one person? Or is there a time and space that we can set aside to be heard for this? Because we really do, we're stakeholders, and we want to be supportive, we want to be on board, but right now we're feeling a lack of information and input. So maybe coming as a group and saying, hey, we understand and we respect that boundary, but we also, we are also aware of our own worth and knowledge in this situation. And yeah, Allison Green is her name. It's the Ask a Manager blog. I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously that would be hugely frustrating. I'd want to know, what is the reason that you've been told that you are not to engage or have a dialogue, and then I would, depending on what that is, you might need to limit your inquiry to really what's the highest priority. Is like, okay, so if it's about something that is going to cost the institution money and time and be a waste of resources in the future, yeah, that stinks. But is there is there one element to what you are looking for? Is it about fire suppression? Like, we need to understand what the fire suppression system is, or we have some ideas about how collections need to be stored for longevity and because of a risk to the condition. Maybe you need to start from there, and from a position of fundamental care for the mission, and hopefully open the door to other things that are ultimately beneficial to the strength of the project. Yeah, it's a I'm sure you're in a delicate position.
It must be so frustrating.
But as far as talking to construction crew, I mentioned earlier that there is a there's a process. Building sciences is a process for in developing and discussing a project. No, you probably, if I was in the position as a project manager, I wouldn't want a staff member to have a discussion with a contractor unless I was in the room and I could frame that question, right? Because I'm just going to pick a little tiny example. Gosh, can that outlet be 3 feet over there? And that electrical contractor says, absolutely. Do you want that? And you say, yeah, I want it. You've now added cost, and and a change order is gold to a subcontractor. And they will say, your employee told me to do it, and they're going to have to pay that money. So there's a process for that, but that needs to be understood and have an established the correct dialogue opportunities. It can't just be any random person talking to any random contractor. There has to be a coordination of that as well. Now, just like you're coordinating all those conduits, you're also coordinating communication so that it is documented and the context and the purpose is clear. But I don't know what the issue exactly is, but happy to discuss it. And
that's another term of art that people may not be familiar with, is a change request. And it was one that I wasn't aware of until I was working on a project at the Getty, where we were contracting out to Sun Microsystems, and we had a project manager, and they kept talking about like, oh, change request. That's going to be a change request, or like, oh, we can do that without a change request. And essentially what it is when you get a budget for a project from a contractor, it's with very specific parameters for the work that they're going to do. And if you change the terms or change the work or ask them to do work that is more than they budgeted for, then that impacts their profit margin. And so they will say, like, if you put in a change request, then you are agreeing that we might be billing you more for this, because this is specifically a significant enough departure from the terms of our contracted work that we're going to agree right here at this table. That's a change request, and it's going to cost you. So yeah, OT, overtime, over budget, and sometimes change requests can result in things costing less, but I have never actually seen that happening. But knowing what a change request is really important. So, and Andrew,
since we're talking about savings, there's also the value engineering process. So after you have gone very far down the design process and you now have a cost based on the design, now you're going to have to value engineer it. That's another term of art, is a little opaque. You're going to find those things that are the nice to haves, but maybe have a large cost impact that you can pull back on. And you should have this list in the back of your mind, or on a documented somewhere. It's like, what can you reasonably give back in this project so that you can achieve your main objectives? The value engineering process makes a project stronger. It makes it stronger and really focuses the efforts, the budget, the available resources.
Yeah, so off-the-shelf light fixtures instead of custom made, for instance, kind of downgrading the finishes, all those little things.
And the off-the-shelf are going to be easy to maintain and have spare parts for anyway.